Startup Hawaiʻi, local innovation, global reach. We want to have an impact here first and foremost, but we also want to be able to benefit from the global economy, which is often something we are left out of. So at Startup Hawaiʻi, we are building a tech startup ecosystem that will connect founders and the greater community with resources and support on Hawaii Island and beyond. I think this is important to say there are resources that will be here, but it's all equally as important to leverage resources that are found elsewhere. And ecosystem can sound really vague and amorphous, but it's just like our natural environment. All of the components that come together, like soil, water, weather, plants, if some of these are disconnected or missing or not healthy.
Sorry. Maria?
Yes.
Are you, they're not seeing the slides. Are you sharing?
I am. I wonder if it went away. Let me try again.
I never saw it.
Okay.
There it is.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, you get the gist. We are building an ecosystem. And an ecosystem, if some of the parts are not healthy or missing, all of the parts can eventually fail. It's the same for a startup ecosystem. We need to make sure that ecosystem and the foundation are strong for individual efforts to succeed. And I think this quote from the Kauffman Foundation does a really good job. It says it well. It's about human relationships and connections. It's not about fancy buildings and physical infrastructure. And while those things may come, we do need to focus on building consistent, collaborative human engagement first of all. Sorry, does someone have a question or no? Okay. So we need the human engagement first in order to be truly successful in the future. And like I said, there's so many great things happening here, but we're spread out and we're isolated and we're small, so we are stronger together. This is a framework of what I mean when I say ecosystem. It's a framework and community that supports ideas and people and scale and feedback loop. And what that means is the life cycle of a company. The ideas all start with people. People that have been exposed to challenges and have a desire to create solutions, that have the work experience and the skills, the tools and the resources to create solutions. And they have the belief that there is a path to solve big problems if they so choose. And that's what the people development segment is all about. This goes into actual ideas and building companies where you're testing and you're reaching a certain level of revenue, and you may have an understanding of the fact that there's some demand for what you're offering. Then you're ready to really go for it and scale and get more customers and get into more places. Then if it works out for you, your experience, you know the hardships and the emotional roller coaster that is involved in creating and building a company. This is the start of the feedback loop. If you're going to give back to a community, it's probably going to be where your business is. And that could be in the form of mentorship or connections or customer relationships or financial. And that's the lasting sustainable cycle that we're trying to achieve with the ecosystem and community and the power of the entire engine. And if we can build this kind of strong ecosystem that supports the entire life cycle of a company, from idea to scale, that means creating and keeping more companies and more talent, which will ultimately create a more diverse, equitable, and sustainable Hawaii Island economy. We don't want to just launch companies and lose them because that ultimately takes people away too. What do we mean by tech? We define this rather broadly compared to some other technology ecosystems. We define it as high growth, scalable companies solving big problems by leveraging science, technology, and engineering. And by using this kind of broad focus, we play to our island's strengths, and we position ourselves to be a place for experimentation and innovation that solves big problems and global problems like climate change or food insecurity or energy, and problems that when they are solved, make us and our island a more resilient place, and they make the world a better place. So as I mentioned, this focus does play to our strengths, and that's not the only strength we have. We have the makings of an incredible ecosystem here. We have people, we may be spread out, but there are 200,000 people here. There are very passionate people, very interested and determined to make a difference here, and people that believe in the values of this community. We have a strong research capability combined with unique environmental and geographic features, which makes this a great place for a lot of industries to experiment in terms of resiliency. And it gives us a chance to solve big problems. The remote connections piece is more of a evening of the playing field rather than an advantage. But since the pandemic, remote connections are being accepted like never before. And there's just no reason why we can't be more connected and we can't participate in a global economy. We also do have tech companies. Most people I run into think that Hawaii Island is a tech desert, but this meetup makes it pretty clear that it's not. And there's just a lot of people that I've already met that are very credible tech founders, employees in tech, leaders in tech. They just don't make a big splash about it. There's also a lot of people that are looking to get involved, but just don't know how yet. So there's a lot of power there. And then finally, Hawaii has a long history of culture, or a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. And I'm sure many of you know that, but the world doesn't know that or acknowledge this place as a place for innovation. And this kind of new frontier of bringing together these existing resources that we have and focusing on tech is just a natural extension of our culture of innovation. And how we are going to succeed on this path is looking towards our strengths and creating our own path, not by following in the same path of every other startup community, trying to recreate Silicon Valley, doing all the things that we think we might be supposed to be doing to create this community. We're going to do it our way and in a way that is true to our island. And in fact, that is how other rural communities that have been successful have done it, by heeding the learnings of other places, but forging their own paths, which is why we have this set of guiding principles. This is really important to continually guide this community in the right way that keeps us true to us. So leading with kokua, which we covered in our ground rules, is helping other people first without expectation of immediate gain. Native intelligence, we should be embracing indigenous cultures, knowledge, and practices, and sustainability, balancing equity, economy, and the environment in all things that we do. This is a lot, obviously. It's a huge vision, it's a huge goal, and it will take time, but this is our path forward. And it's important that people remain hopeful, because as in any growing company, there are ups and downs, big challenges, big wins. So keeping this momentum going and movement going as long as it takes, and learning along the way and iterating, not just going for the sake of going, but failing fast and go after experimenting. And this is important because eventually this will become a sustaining ecosystem. It will start to have a life of its own once these connections are made. And we're coming back to this ecosystem right now just to talk a little bit more about some outcome of the work that we've done. So I've just gone through a framework and a vision, but what are we really doing? And so far on the ground, we've done a mapping exercise of some resources that are available here, but also available to access without leaving. So for example, if there's something available on Oahu that can be done here without having to leave, that is also a resource to us. And so there are some apparent gaps that have come out of that work. And so we're going to start from the left. And the first apparent gap that we've noticed is that there are a lot of interesting programs for K through 12 students. One that I really admire is Nalukai Academy, and programs like these, they provide that initial exposure to young people to get them really thinking about possibilities and solving problems and how to think through them. So this is a huge strength that I see. But when you move into higher, or I should say, between higher ed and your professional opportunities, there seems to be a gap in connecting students, recent graduates, and young professionals with opportunities in technology, particularly technology. And that's a problem for a lot of reasons. We don't want to lose that talent. The next area is in between ideate and build and scaling. There's a ton of support for early stage companies through accelerators like Blue Startups, Found Her, or Elemental, and to our own small business development centers, but there's not a ton of support once those companies leave that stage. And going into scaling requires a completely different skill set and connections, and particularly in technology. And so there just needs to be a little bit more support there for those companies to keep them, or they will leave. The third is the interconnectedness of our community. Obviously, there's a lot of people that want to help. They want to be a part of this, and they already are helping, but there isn't a system or a structure to engage with each other or across different verticals and to support each other. And this includes things like meetups or just connections across like mentors to founders. So there's just a lot of connections that could happen that will really, really make our ecosystem a lot stronger. So these are the 3 gaps that we are focused on as we think about creating programs specifically to fit into this ecosystem. And we're purposely staying out of certain areas because duplicating efforts where we have strengths is just not, it's not going to help anybody. The last thing on this I will call attention to is the feedback loop. That piece will come. I don't see it as a weakness. It's already happening, and it's just not apparent. We have some successful entrepreneurs here, and like I said, they don't really make a splash, but there are a lot of people that are willing to give back. Our current priorities are separated into 2 pieces, and the first priority for us is this ecosystem, because I do think it's essential for the parts to be successful. So we're growing membership. We'd like to amplify existing programs that other people don't know about, because there's just so many amazing things happening. We'd like to create some kind of safe space online to connect each other and allow you to connect with each other without a middleman, and to change the perception of Hawaii Island and our strengths, because there's a lot that people don't know about this place. The next is much more specific and programmatic. We are trying to fill those gaps that I just mentioned. And 3 opportunities that have come to the surface are developing some kind of remote employer network to connect students and recent graduates with remote opportunities that they shouldn't have to leave to access. Plenty of people are accessing remote opportunities all over the place without having to move their current homes. And unfortunately, remote work included is a lot based on relationships. So we think that we can remove that barrier. And be the advocate for those students and graduates. The next would be technical assistance for companies ready to scale. As I said, the structured TBD on that. And then building on existing local investor network initiatives. There are already initiatives occurring, but it doesn't seem that there's a structure to facilitate sourcing and probably particularly diligence in an organized fashion. The good news is it is happening already, which is very exciting. How can you get involved as an individual? And I do want to make sure you know you don't have to be actively involved to be a part of this community. If you want to be in the know and just understand what's going on, that's fine. That's absolutely, like, everybody's welcome, like I said in the beginning. The few things you can do, whether you want to be active or not, is to share our website and this startuphawaiʻi.com join. And I will put that link in the chat. And so that would just be amazing to grow our membership. And if you haven't signed up, if you could, that would be awesome as well. Even though I know who you are here, there are a few questions on there that help us target our communications and event notices. That would probably make your email inbox a lot more manageable. The next is that you can volunteer as an executive or ad hoc technical mentor. Executive, I will send these definitions around, but executive is really someone who wants to mentor a company and stick with them for quite some time if the match is there. An ad hoc technical mentor is someone that you are okay with a founder in our community picking up the phone and saying, I have a question about SEO. So things like that. If you are not in tech, again, really important, we have ecosystem builders that are volunteering to just help convene, be a host of an event. You could spread the word in your community. You could help your community members either understand or get their feedback so we can make this better. If you're a successful tech founder, we really need your feedback too. It's important that this ecosystem is built in a way that is going to work for founders, and you're the ones who know what they need. Just as much, we want community feedback because our community is based on the members of our community on Hawaii Island. We need to know what you think as well. And always share your feedback and ideas. I'm always open, and feedback is welcome. If you're an entity, so a company or a nonprofit or any kind of organization, just like we want individuals to be a part of this, we want companies and organizations of all types to be a part of this. So if this resonates with you and you're not sure how you want to be involved, but you just want to show your support, that is extremely helpful to know. And for our group partner, if you're an organization that this resonates and you're looking for partnership or collaboration, I'm constantly learning from the partners that we're gaining in our community. And there are areas like education where we know we want to contribute, but we do want to leave that up to the experts. So we'd love to just complement those kinds of partnerships or through a partnership. There's also sponsorship and investment opportunities if you're a company or individual and you feel strongly about one of the gaps or just the organization and vision in general. We're looking for partners there to just help us shape those efforts. And then finally, the remote employer network is something that's a very near term. We have partnership there, and it's something that we hope to implement like in the next maybe year. So if you are one of those employees in a technology company on the mainland or outside of Hawaii Island, and you would be willing to try to be a champion for this and host a single graduate or an intern, that's so important to this initiative right now. We'd love to talk to you about how that could work. And that can be anything from tech in a tech company to operations and finance and marketing and sales, you name it, which is why this is such an interesting opportunity. And coming soon, the near-term things and events in person, we're going to try to do tours of some innovative local businesses. And for those of you who are not in Hawaii Island, there will be an online engagement platform, which will help us just make those connections here and abroad. And then we will have a podcast. And so you get to learn about all these interesting things that I'm telling you exist here. But for now, you'll just have to go on belief. And to bring it back, like why we're doing this, we think that Hawaii Island can be a model for equity, resilience, and sustainability global. We want to have an energized and hopeful community where young people see possibilities and don't have to leave to find fulfilling careers. We'd love to be a model for other rural, remote destinations, particularly island nations. And then it'd be amazing to see a global ecosystem of similar communities come together to give some power and a voice to the rural world, which is something we don't have. Again, if this interests you and you just want to stay informed, you can sign up at Startup Hawaiʻi/join, which I will put in the chat again. And also plug to follow us on social media because we're growing our presence. And I'll leave the contact up here for just a moment, but we can feel free to start with any questions people have. Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. And I think Noelle is monitoring, so please let me know if there's any questions.